Hi, and welcome to episode 30 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. We are on the 38th floor of the New Yorker Hotel in New York, New York. Yesterday, we attended the Inside Bitcoins conference, and this morning, it's about, I guess it's a little after 10 a.m. East Coast time, which means 7 a.m. West Coast time, the time that my brain is still on. Joining us today, we've got my normal co-host, Stephanie Murphy.
Hello, we're in the same room again.
Yes, we're in the same room again. Second time.
Yeah, it's fun.
Sweet. And then also a special guest host, Mr. Jonathan Mohan.
Hey, I have some big shoes to fill, but I hope to do them quite accurately.
So John Mohan, again, has been on the show before and is the founder and whirlwind of activity that constitutes the planning behind the Bitcoin NYC group and various events. We went to a cocktail party night before last?
Yes, on Monday.
Second market that you helped put together, and there was a combination group event for Let's Talk Bitcoin and for a couple of other, I think Coinsetter was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Coinsetter, and then the other one was, of course, Second Market.
Yeah, I heard that 140 people RSVP'd. They had to kick people out.
Yeah, that was a funny thing. That was... Apologies to listeners. If anybody didn't get in, feel free to email complaints to Adam at letstalkbitcoin.com. But yeah, I mean, so this was an incredible event. I got to say, even for a one-day event, a lot of stuff happened. You know, the talks again, we had this thing where the talks were pretty good, but again, it was more about the attendees than about the speakers.
Some feedback I got was there were way more amazing people in the audience than sometimes. As a panelist, I'm going to say, you know...
Right, exactly. Well, we all spoke there, and so, I mean, I feel comfortable saying
Oh, yeah, I'm fine with that, too.
I was like, I would talk, I'm like, what do you do? Why weren't you on that?
Right.
Oh, my God.
It's true. Like, you'd walk around and everybody has CEO on their name tag. I wanted to say I'm like the CEO of Pork Therapy or something. But, yeah, I mean, everybody had a project. They all had things to say. At one point, I was doing some interviews, like, out in the hallway, and I realized that, like, several hours had gone by, and I had missed Adam's talk, actually, I wanted to see it, but I was, like, just one interview after the other, so... Yeah,
no, you were a machine out there. That was a thing. So how many interviews did you get this time, Stephanie?
Oh, at least a dozen.
Okay, so you got, I think it was it 20 last time? I think it was about 20 25 last time. Okay, yeah. so that's your ratio is about keeping up. It's about 12 to 15 a day.
Well, hopefully it's quality too and not just quantity. Well, but honestly, I thought they were great. Like, I talked to some people that I had been wanting to talk to, and it was really interesting. Like, especially to hear more about what's going on in the mining scene. Those were probably my favorite interviews. I talked to Sam from KNC Miner and Josh from Butterfly Labs, and I also found out about Feathercoin. That was interesting, too.
Yeah. Did you meet the CIO there?
Yes, that was Peter.
Yeah, was that his name? I thought his name was John. I'm terrible with names.
It was Peter John.
Peter John, there you go. Okay, that makes sense.
My mother says never to trust people with two first names. Maybe that's a sign. I had no idea he was there.
Yeah, it was cool. Like, I learned some things I didn't know about Feathercoin before, and I kind of wanted to get Feathercoins last night when I got home.
I don't know. I joke with Jonathan Mohan, the BitMessage guy, that we should make our own cryptocurrency and call it breath like air. And what it will do is there will only ever be 21 quadrillion units in circulation, and it will be the heir to Feathercoin's copper. It's so spiny, like, it's just unmeterable. You don't care because it's so many. And I think it's going to go places. I think this is the time to announce it.
There was so much more going on too. There were a lot of big media there. Adam, I don't know if they're going to do anything with it, but you and I were both on camera for CBS National.
Yeah, no, she was excited. We spoke with the producer there. I actually, walking out of the talks on the way to lunch, I actually didn't eat breakfast yesterday, and so I was heading to lunch, but then I was walking by and I saw this bewildered-looking woman who had a name tag that said producer CBS, and I, reversed, came back and was like, hey, I'm Adam B. Levine. Let's talk Bitcoin. No, do you need any help finding anyone? So that's what I try to do at these events most of all, is just to be helpful. And
Oh, you were great with that. You lined up a bunch of interviews. I think she learned a lot about Bitcoin because she was totally new to it.
Yeah.
I'm glad they decided to come. CNN was there in the morning.
Well, they weren't necessarily, CBS wasn't, she was just there to see if they should cover it. And so after I told her that I could get her 10 interviews, she's like, okay, I'm calling the crew. And then they showed up about a half hour later. But no, it was great. I mean, it's terrific. Again, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general are hard to understand if you don't have the basis to understand them. And so when especially journalists come into play, There, a lot of times these people don't have a real monetary background, so it's hard to appreciate it. But if you can get out there and you can give them good analogies that they can understand and they can take back to their listeners, viewers, because that, of course, is the other thing, is that if they can't understand it, how in hell are they supposed to, present it to an audience that is even less informed about the topic than they are? So, I think that we actually did some good work yesterday, and I know PBS was there too.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Reuters, TechCrunch. I mean, a lot of big names.
Yeah.
Honestly. It was great.
At DEF CON, they have something called Spot the Fed, where it's a game where you have to spot who's a federal agent. And actually, I don't know in the San Jose conference if you had any, but did you...
Andreas claimed that he identified an FBI agent.
Were you able to meet the special agent who was here from the FBI Cybercrimes Division?
I didn't meet him, but I heard you're having lunch with him.
Yeah, next week I want to do that. He seems really interesting.
Wow. So you didn't have to spot him. He was obvious.
Oh, he was wearing a name tag. It said FBI. He didn't look like a Fed. He was wearing a T-shirt and just hanging out.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Well, then the question becomes, who was incognito?
Right. I had a really fun moment where someone had given me his card. Just feel like, oh my God, I talked to this Fed. You have to talk to him. So when I went to speak to him, I said, hey, I'm Jonathan. We should grab lunch sometime. And he said, oh, let me give you my card. And I was like, that's all right. I already have all your information. He was like, what?
Ahead of the game. Yeah, no, in addition to the FBI, I did not meet the agent there, but I did see someone from Treasury there. And I got a card from them, and we're going to speak to them because, again, they're really what it seemed like, again, and this might not be true of everyone within these agencies, but certainly the people who were there, at the very least, seemed like they, were curious and just didn't really know what was going on, So, I mean, so that could be an act.
Surprise me?
Right, exactly. But it seems actually fairly likely that, given all the things to pay attention to, this is just simply not something that the majority of them have been paying attention to.
Right. And you had mentioned PBS, so I was speaking with them, and at the end of the interview, the producer had mentioned, we were talking about potentially thinking about accepting Bitcoin. And I said,
Really?
Oh my God, that's amazing. All right, wait.
Wow.
I'm going to do as much as I possibly can to make this a reality. And that's what's so amazing about the conference is when you have 400 entrepreneurs in a room, it's really easy to start doing things.
Right.
So I immediately ran to Tony Gillespie of BitPay, and I was like, all right, look, you and I, we're going to meet with PBS, and we're going to make this happen. And I got out 3 sheets of paper, and I just ran around the conference. And during that time, we actually got 200 Bitcoins pledged towards going to PBS should they accept Bitcoin.
Wow.
So actually, Josh from Butterfly Labs pledged 50. And then Yifu pledged 50. Mm-hmm. And Sam from the KNC miner, he pledged 50 as well. And then the Trade Hill pledged 10. And then we have, the Bitcoin 100, which is always available for 10 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then about 20 people also pitched in on 1 Bitcoin. So it was kind of a communal effort. I'm just shocked by how much demand there is to just see someone like PBS get behind Bitcoin.
Well, that actually exceeds the number you were going for, right? Because at the end of the conference, we ended a little bit early because one of the speakers didn't show up. Christian Dumont. I believe
from
that's
Foodler.
The name, from Foodler.
I wanted to talk to him.
I know. We've been trying to schedule with him because, again, they have a really interesting use case, and that's what he was supposed to be speaking about there. But as far as I understand, it sounds like he missed 2 flights by coming here and did not make it in.
Yeah, so I can understand that. It's easy to get lost in New York, and it's easy to...
It's easy to not get to New York, too, apparently.
Totally.
So...
hopefully we'll be able to catch up with him later, but...
I'm sure. Foodler's not going anywhere. Again, it seems like they're having a lot of success with the space, so, there's no incentive for them to leave.
I just saw something saying that their Bitcoin orders, so it's a thing where you can order takeout, and they take Bitcoin. So you can order takeout locally with Bitcoin, and I just saw an article about it, and apparently, their Bitcoin orders have grown, some huge amount, tripled over the last month or something.
So, of course, the question with that always is, what were they to begin with?
Yeah.
Because tripling is all...
We had 1 Bitcoin order last month.
Exactly.
Now we have 3.
It's all kind of relative when you're talking about abstract numbers like that. So let's talk about the conference. So, that was certainly something, is that we did see a lot of ASICs there. I don't think anybody spoke about ASICs. This was not really a technical event. This was more on the regulatory side of things.
Yeah, or just, an intro. They really did try to make it friendly to people who had no idea what Bitcoin was, actually. Mm-hmm. The keynote speaker was Charlie Shrem, so he spoke first thing in the morning. And actually, I was seated right in front of his parents. And so that was cool, because I got to meet his parents. And,
cool.
He was saying that, he founded BitInstant, and he's a young guy. He's only 23 years old, and... just amazing what he's done with BitInstant, in that time. But he was saying that he got laughed out of every venture capital firm that he tried to pitch the idea to back, several years ago, 3 years ago, I think, when he was trying to start BitInstant. So he had to actually get the startup funding from his mom.
Right.
And so she was standing up and she was like, woohoo!
The number, though, that was the thing that surprised me. I assumed that there was more cost behind BitInstant, but he said that he...
$10,000.
Yeah, it was like $10,000 to start BitInstant,
Yeah. I'm sure he didn't have an office in Manhattan at first.
Right, obviously, but it just goes to show the barrier to entry on these properties, even with something like that, where you're actually interfacing with, the monetary side of it is just not that expensive until you get to regulatory compliance. And once you get to regulatory compliance, the costs go through the roof, and you suddenly need millions of dollars in order to pay the bonds, in order to, just the endless things.
I think that's really important to point out because it's really already, we don't even have really regulations much about Bitcoin. But just the thought that there could be regulations about Bitcoin is stifling a lot of Bitcoin business.
Yeah.
And we saw there was a venture capitalist panel, actually, of several investors who were either had invested in Bitcoin businesses or had invested in Bitcoin personally or were planning on it. And one of the things they said that they would, avoid, that was like a red flag for Bitcoin businesses that they would not want to fund a business, was if they had basically regulations hanging over their head or like regulatory liability. So basically exchanges and things that could be potentially considered money services businesses or anything like that.
And so at one of my weekly entrepreneurship meetings, regulation is the topic of the town because there is this just tremendous incentive for VCs to not want to invest in something to which you can't quantify the risk for. And if you don't have your regulation down, you're just a risky bet.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how great your business is. And that just struck me as so unfair. You could have an amazing idea for a business,
right,
and these bureaucrats are just going to get in your way, and you won't be able to get funding.
Hang on a second. It's not fair, Stephanie? It's not fair? Anyways, no, continue. Of course it's not fair. This isn't fair. It's not supposed to be fair.
And there's a reason why the finance hasn't changed that much in America, and it's because of what's happening here.
Right.
Yeah, with the regulation, exactly.
Yeah. And
everybody says the U.S. is the least friendly environment for, any business that involves money.
And I actually think that, Bitcoin may be the canary in the mine to say that, this might actually be the point where progress and innovation needs to leave America in order to succeed. Because I've been having weeks and weeks of discussions with regulators, and I myself was scared away from starting a company just because I would be a money transmitter and would need hundreds of thousands of dollars to start my idea.
Sad.
When really the costs were under $10,000 to get it started.
Yeah.
And
how many other people had the same experience?
So many. I'm talking to them, and the answer is always, well, Eric and Gabe and the bunch down in Panama, they're welcoming. They'll hook you up. They'll give you a place to crash for a little bit until you find somewhere. And Panama's right there, 0% income tax. We can do it, guys.
You're talking about Coin-a-Pult.
Yes, Coin-a-Pult.
That's a company Eric Voorhees, and yeah, that really stood out to me. Just the focus on, where is this going to go from a sort of regulatory standpoint? And I feel really sad about that. I love to see these businesses growing, and we have such an amazing technology that could do so much for freedom in the world, for convenience. It just opens up so many possibilities. It really is the future of money for a reason, because it's so much better than what we've got right now. Credit cards were great. They were an innovation, but that was 40, 30 years ago, right, at this point. And so, it's time for something new, and I'd like it to be able to just go and see what happens with it. But it seems like there's a storm cloud that may be holding a lot of people back.
I think that storm, so in addition to the VC, in addition to the miners that we saw, the miner manufacturers we saw there, we also saw a whole bunch of lawyers. An incredible amount of lawyers. This was really, I was surprised by how well represented they were. And, we saw the firm that
really, the lawyers were well represented?
We were actually sitting in front of a gentleman who represents the online bar, I think is his project. It's out of South Africa, actually, but they have 3,000 lawyers he speaks to. And, and he was there, he was just learning about Bitcoin, so we talked to him for a good long time. He was very interested. They're also into permaculture.
Wow.
Crystal, his wife, you're not going to talk? Okay, never mind. Crystal spoke to him about permaculture more than I did. My wife, Crystal. But she's
awesome.
the engineer.
She's our producer.
Yes, exactly. She's our producer. They were well represented. You know, in the talks, it seemed like there was a theme that I was a little bit disturbed by, which is that Bitcoin fundamentally has to change in order to work in the long term.
Yeah, I saw that, and I totally think that's just inspired by the regulations that people fear are coming, and so they're like, well, it's not so bad if we don't make it anonymous, and if we cause chargebacks, if we build chargebacks in Bitcoin, what's the big deal?
Right, exactly.
Well, the big deal is it's not Bitcoin anymore.
I feel like it's easy to confuse a business opportunity to fundamental changes to Bitcoin itself. So these people, that's what businesses are for, is you see a little gap and you fill that niche. So I think that a lot of these will just be a Bitcoin back-end business that could fill the capacity to facilitate chargebacks.
Well, I think that's the hope. That's the hope,
right.
Is that you wind up with something like that, is that you wind up with like an insurance type of system where, where merchants subscribe and pay a fee, and then then there's the ability to do voluntary chargebacks, and you have a third-party arbitrator who can essentially come in and mediate that.
That can happen with escrow services now, though. There are some, that are starting up.
Yes, that's true. But again, you add layers of cost to this thing every time you do stuff
right.
like this. And that again is the problem, is that over the long term, the question is, how are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater by trying to fix these problems? Are we in fact ruining the system as a whole?
Yeah, this whole revolutionary new technology that's completely different than the legacy banking system is so great. We just need to make it a little more like the legacy banking system to make it better. Yeah, and I was disturbed by the way that it was presented in a lot of the talks that I saw. We need to do this. It's not so bad. Come on, let's just, tie our identities to all our Bitcoin addresses and put a social security number on it, and let's get rid of the irreversibility of transactions, and we need to do this, or else Bitcoin will never get mainstream adoption. I disagree with that, and I was sad to see that I guess they would probably say, well, we're being pragmatic because this is going to have to happen anyway if Bitcoin's going to succeed. Well, I'm going to take the idealist position, as I always do, and I just want to put it out there and say I don't think that has to happen, and we can use Bitcoin as it was initially intended, and there are certainly uses for Bitcoin that don't involve sacrificing some of those great things about Bitcoin.
Right. And of course, the option is always there if you want to create Comply Coin. I think that
Comply Coin! Yeah, that would be a great marketing.
There's a huge niche for that, I think.
Sadly, I think there are lots of people who would they'd hear it and they'd say, oh, goody, I can do everything the regulators want me to do.
I thought it does exist. It's called Ripple.
There you go. Well, but even Ripple has some problems because it is still a kind of, it's not anonymous, but because it has entry points and exit points where there's identification that has to...
What do people criticize Ripple for? Can you just give us an overview of that? Because I think a lot of our listeners don't even know what Ripple is, let alone understand the criticisms of it. So let's talk about that.
I'm assuming they're great entrepreneurs. I'm not disparaging them. I all power to them to trying to better the ecosystem. But when it comes to looking at alternative cryptocurrencies, there are a couple of key identifiers as to whether or not this is a scam. And when you apply it to something like Ripple, it kind of has some warning signals. So one of them is pre-mining. So if you're going
Are you talking about XRP, which is the currency that Ripple uses?
Right, yes.
Okay, but let's say what Ripple is first.
Sorry.
So Ripple is and I don't completely understand it either, so correct me if I'm wrong. But basically it's a network where you can easily convert different currencies. Let's say you need to borrow $50 to get some groceries or something. You could trust somebody who trusts somebody else in China, and they could basically send, loan you Bitcoins or loan you Ripples or loan you Yuans or whatever, and you could get your $50. And Ripple is just the medium of exchange. All the lending, I guess, takes place outside of Ripple, I guess. But it's basically a system that's built on trust networks between people, and it's a way to convert currencies and exchange credit peer-to-peer.
Right. And of course, all those things you say basically translate to its debt transmission network. where essentially you're not, and this is why you can send dollars through it so fast. Again, you can send dollars just as fast as you can send Bitcoin because you're not really sending the dollars. You're transferring a debt from something that you own and you're applying it to somebody else.
And I think when you look at Ripple, it's an amazing iterative step on our current banking financial system.
Yes, this is important.
And I look at it and I'm like, I know 5 years from now or 3 years from now when Congress is going to start looking at this space, they're going to be like, well, why can't you be like your brother? Ripple's able to do it. How come you guys can't do it? Come on, like Bitcoin, get with it.
Oh.
So I think that Ripple, is a great transitory, transition into Bitcoin.
But that tool, the debt transfer network, exists outside of the cryptocurrency Ripples, and that the cryptocurrency is similar to Bitcoin, right? And that's what you were talking about before with when you said. There's a red flag because they pre-mined XRP and then we're giving them away. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, go on, continue.
So there are a couple of red flags when you're looking at cryptocurrencies that just get started, and one of them is, has the owner pre-mined it? And if you look at the distribution of Ripple that are in existence, it's like 50 people own a significant portion of the Ripple.
They pre-mined all of them, didn't they?
Yeah. It's 100% pre-mined.
Right. So, but it's a little bit misleading because in the Ripple network, you're not really. It's not like I'm going to send 20 ripples to you and then you're going to cash the ripples. It's more like ripples are stamps.
Right.
Where it's like an anti-spam mechanism more than it is a value transfer mechanic.
Yeah.
But I remember reading somewhere that if you looked at the current market price of a Ripple and then you multiplied it by the 100 billion ripples that they have or something, whatever that number is, that it was equal to the value, the market cap of the Bitcoin network.
So they've given themselves an impressive pre-market valuation.
Yeah. So I don't know how that works.
Good work if you can find it.
But it kind of looks like they're able to print money, in my opinion.
You're listening to Let's Talk Bitcoin, the premier audiocast providing news and insights that cover the rapidly evolving world of digital money. Our twice-weekly show include analysis of late-breaking news, updates on key technical, business, and regulatory issues, and in-depth interviews with the key people driving the new digital economy. Let's Talk Bitcoin offers sponsors an attractive way to reach a targeted and savvy audience. For more information, email sponsors@letstalkbitcoin.com.
More than 300,000 users and counting trust blockchain.info. It's a Bitcoin wallet service and a wealth of Bitcoin information, and is completely free to use. With a blockchain.info wallet, you'll get the convenience of a web wallet and the security of a desktop client. Blockchain.info is also a block explorer. You can use it to see Bitcoin transactions in real time, check the balance of any Bitcoin address, and view many handy Bitcoin charts, all for free. See what they have to offer today at blockchain.info.
I think that what you said there about Ripple being an iterative step is really important because that's the thing is that if Ripple had come out, and I think to a certain degree this extends to open transactions too, because it also is a debt transmission mechanism because you can't. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are so fluid because they don't exist in real life. So when you're talking about assets that have real life presence, you just simply can't cram those down and shove them through an internet connection.
Through the tubes.
Exactly. So it has to be a debt transmission mechanism in order to do that. But the thing is that with Bitcoin and with cryptocurrencies, you don't need to do that at all. It's unnecessary. And especially as we move towards more of a digital economy, where the need to do that at all goes away, basically. So, again, it's one of those things where if the Ripple system had come out before Bitcoin, then we'd be having a very different conversation now, and that would probably be what we do. Let's talk Ripple. Because, again, compared to the banking system we have now, it's so much more efficient. Compared to cryptocurrencies, it's less compelling. For me, at least.
I just think that if the thing that Bitcoin does is force the current banking paradigm to move to Ripple, and then the conversation is Ripple versus Bitcoin, that is a fantastic world to live in.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And that's an interesting point, because that certainly could be. Ripple has gotten a lot of very high-profile investors, and certainly that could be the play that they kind of have in mind, is that, okay, so you've got these cryptocurrencies, but they're kind of flatly incompatible with the existing financial system. So if we're going to move towards something that's more like that, then this is an intermediary step that we can take that we know already complies and can be easily integrated in. And so then we just sell it essentially software as a service to all of these banking institutions around the world. Right. Bob's your uncle. We're the de facto center of it all again. So it's a very interesting space for them to operate in right now, I think.
Was there someone from Ripple at the conference?
Yes. I'm not sure if I talked to anyone from Ripple. The coin thing and the open thing, very, very difficult. So many companies there have those in the names. It's like when I used to work in the green space and everybody had like green or bio or all these other nonsense. You know, I mean, again, it's like the first couple of companies that do it, that's great. And then the next 400 companies that do it, it's confusing.
So if you meet someone new and you like forget what company they're with, you're like, oh yeah, you're from Coin.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, Coin thing, yeah.
I saw 3 different accountants who had a play on Bitcoin and accountant in the name, and I couldn't remember them just because they were so similar in name.
I got some interesting people remembering variations of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Actually, like someone goes, oh yeah, you're from Bitcoin Talk, and then someone, yo, Bit Talk Live, and Let's Talk Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Oh, real quick, what's the difference between Ripple and OpenCoin or Open Transactions?
Open Transactions. So Ripple is the product of a company called OpenCoin. And Open Transactions is the product of a company called Monetas. And that's, we've interviewed Chris Odom before. He's he goes by Fellow Traveler. He's the progenitor of that technology. I think he's more of a marketer than he is a code guy. But he managed to put it together to a point where he's really been able to attract some attention. I know that they're either have just funded or they're in the process of funding right now and are raising a pretty decent amount of capital because, again, there's a lot of, when you're talking about these systems, it's so much easier to comply with these various debt transfer mechanisms because they integrate so much better. So, again, that's where a lot of the money seems like it's going. And that and altcoins, too. There's some altcoins that are getting some traction.
I talked to a Litecoin developer yesterday, and I mean, there were some Litecoin people there, and they were so cool and pleasant to talk to, and I just, I can't wait to see where they're going, because I think we're going to have an interview with Warren, who's one of the Litecoin devs, to talk about, the new release and what they're going to do with Litecoin in the future. And I'm just impressed with, there's more infrastructure coming out, not just with Litecoins, but with all these different altcoins.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these coins are where Bitcoin was a couple of years ago. And I think people see that and maybe feel like they missed the boat with Bitcoin or whatever. They got in too late and they want to get in. I think we're still very early in the adoption curve of even Bitcoin. But it's tempting, you see an altcoin and it looks like it has potential, you want to get in on the ground floor and then see what it does.
Exactly. Because the multiplier is just so enormous. Again, you look at Bitcoin and certainly the multiplier could be enormous, assuming that you have a whole bunch of $100 to throw at buying some Bitcoin. But with the alts, the buy-in, you're talking about pennies and the potential is still there for that price increase. We don't talk about the price, but from a speculative standpoint, it seems like if you can identify the right alts that actually have the right characteristics to give them a chance of, making it big, then that really is where the exponential growth potential is for a very small investment to become a very big one.
Yeah, and I remember one of our first episodes of Let's Talk Bitcoin, I want to say it was 3 or 4, we talked about altcoins and we gave a rundown of some of the most popular ones. Well, even now, just a few months later, there are hundreds of altcoins, and nobody can keep them straight. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I said, so what are the other script-based altcoins? And he said, oh, well, there's at least 40 I could name off the top of my head. I said, 40? I only know of 2.
It's a testament to the space that I'm kind of eating my words. Several months ago, I would make fun of Litecoin, and now the discussion is, well, maybe because of mining centralization, Bitcoin needs to become more like Litecoin.
Yeah.
So, it's just you're seeing the free market at work because when you allow people to do whatever it is they want to do in the space, the market leader has to learn from the trail. So
I think it's really important to keep an open mind. If you like the concept of Bitcoin, or if you like the concept of just cryptocurrency in general, if you like anything about it, realize that there's a potential. We're still figuring this out, and maybe it's Bitcoin, maybe it's Litecoin, maybe it's some other coin, or maybe it's going to be a bunch of different coins. That's going to be, I guess, that's going to predominate, coming up.
Yeah, over the last 2 months, I've really gone from being in the there can only be one camp to realizing that that's probably actually not going to be the case.
Yeah.
And again, it's because happens, and stuff changes. And when things change, and that's the thing is that when things change, it's going to happen fast. So, what I now have kind of over the last few weeks come to believe is that right now we're in essentially a belief bubble where everybody looks at the cryptocurrency space, and because it's so new, they look and they say, okay, well, Bitcoin is the one, and then there's all these other ones, but they don't matter. And they don't matter right now, but it's because people only look at Bitcoin. What's going to happen is there are going to be some disruptive changes coming in Bitcoin's future, whether or not, the development team likes it. And I think that we're probably going to wind up seeing that illusion, to that bubble get popped, to the illusion dispelled. And at that point, suddenly it'll be a whole new ballgame if you start an alt. And it'll be much more about the merits of your currency rather than about whether or not you've already achieved the network effect. Again, because there's that potential for the exponential multiplier of very small investments to get very large ones.
There is something to be said for achieving the network effect, though.
Certainly.
Yeah, I mean...
It's no small barrier. I don't mean to say that, but I mean...
Essentially what you're saying is we're waiting for Bitcoin to have its Mt. Gox event.
Yeah, I mean, basically... Right, exactly. I mean, but you can think about it like this. When Bitcoin has its Mt. Gox event, instead of all the money in Mt. Gox being locked down, Bitcoin is totally liquid. So it's very, very easy to just slip into the next one. I have to edit that. I've been swearing for the last couple of days.
It's New York. It does it to you. You'll start. But yeah, I mean, you had a company that had everything going for it. It had 90-something% of the space, and through a series of unfortunate events... that would have happened to anyone who, with the point about being a trailblazer.
It took a lot of unfortunate events, though. I mean, like, once it got to a critical point,
right.
It was hard to knock it down off the pedestal, right?
Right. So, but the same could be said to Bitcoin in hindsight. Like, we don't, people like to forget that Bitcoin is 0.8 version right now. Like, it is still a beta. It is a multi-billion-dollar beta. And, what's to stop some random error that no one has seen just wrecking the whole thing?
Oh, so we should talk about that. On that note, so we had some conversations with some miners. Stephanie, I know that you interviewed, and we'll be running those interviews, but, I had some conversations off the record with some people about this kind of question, specifically about, we talked about HOPEC. HOPEC, was it that?
OHEC.
OHEC, that was it. Yeah,
the hashing, Organization of Hashing Power Exporters, right?
Yes, that's right. So some people didn't understand what we were talking about here. It was kind of a joke. The OHEC was a joke because in order for that, in case you haven't listened to the last episode where we talked about this, basically KNC Miner released a statement saying that they were going to stop shipping ASIC units from November through Q1 of 2014, with the idea being that they would that this would protect the investment of the people who had purchased equipment coming before, because in Q2, they're going to release, and they could in Q1, but they're going to hold it till Q2, are going to release hardware that is orders of magnitude cheaper and faster than what people had previously ordered. And so if they were to release it at the pace of technology, then the people who are getting this mining hardware would be almost instantly obsoleted and have no opportunity to earn their money back. And of course, that's bad if you're a business that tries to have customers that buy your product. If you're iterating so fast with the technology that people can't even have a chance to make back their investment.
Although I would like to say in this space that I personally think that's a great marketing pitch for their company, but that if you look at what happened in the past with Yifu of Avalon, he had said, hey, look, we're the market leader just because I had no idea that every single other company wouldn't ship.
Right.
So when you're talking about how successful you're going to be at executing in this space, it's a space that has a lot of people not execute. So I just think that if they could do what they say they're going to do, they should just do it. Because executing in this space is so rare that I think the market needs that more than it needs someone being its Batman. The protector it may not need, but it needs. It doesn't know, but it wants.
I agree with you there, but that was the thing is that, in talking with these guys, I spoke with the guy from Sam, was that his name?
Sam, yeah.
Sam from KNC, and also there were one or two other ASIC manufacturers there whose names I didn't catch in this little conversation we were having, and I was like, so... that you're going to have to get together with all the other players out there, and you guys are all going to have to stop shipping. And he's like,
yeah, like a cartel.
Right, exactly. He's like, yeah, I know. And then we started talking about how it was. He started telling me how it was good for Bitcoin and how they were going to just get together and they'd fight for 3 months, and then they'd be like, okay, guys, well, let's all go back and rework our technology, and then come back 3 months later and we'll fight again. And so they have these this on and off again release schedule that's coordinated throughout the space. And so again, he felt, we thought it was a joke. We thought it was a marketing play. At least I certainly did when we were talking about it before. But speaking with these guys, they were dead serious about it. That is their plan. Now, do you think that they can pull it off?
Oh, gosh. A lot of the other companies were saying, yeah, I think we'll play. I think we'll do that.
Yeah, Josh from Butterfly Labs, said something basically. I was like, so these guys are going to try to do this. I spoke with him separately.
But I guess the question is there some other company out there who is being completely quiet and is totally off the radar, is a wild card, and is going to come up with some powerful ASIC, during that time frame, and that could throw a wrench in everybody's works. But KNC said if somebody does that, they're going to continue to release their devices, as best they can.
Right, exactly. So that's the thing. If the cartel fails, then everybody's just free for all Wild West again. Everybody releases as fast as they can, and of course, then the question becomes, what's the balance between releasing so that you're the first one out, or you're near the first? Because if you're the last man out the door, then chances are pretty good people who are excited about buying that, especially with as fast as the tech is moving, are not going to have any reason to buy your product unless there's a material advantage. And it doesn't really seem like anybody's going out of their way. What I've been waiting for is a truly plug-and-play ASIC solution. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, we still have yet to see anything like that.
The Avalon at BitInstant has been non-operable in the past couple of weeks just because it broke and no one knows how to fix it.
Right.
So
really?
the 1 Bitcoin per day or so that it could be making for the foundation.
Is that why Yifu's here to fix it?
Yeah, that's why he came back from China.
Trip into town.
So they're just like, and they clearly have other things that they have to deal with.
Right. Well,
these things are complicated.
They are.
I've seen a picture of that thing, and it's funny because you see ASICs advertised online, and it's like a sleek little black box, right, with a little USB cable coming off of it. This thing looks like. I don't know, it looks like a printing press. It's big, it's open, it doesn't have a nice case or anything, but it works, or at least it did work until a couple weeks ago. But that was a while ago that the first batch of Avalon ASICs shipped, so it's been operable for a while.
Yeah, they had a good run.
Yeah, definitely. They were in a great position. But yeah, Sam was saying from KNC Miner that this is actually good for Bitcoin. It's not centralizing. It's actually that they're trying to get ASICs into the hands of as many people as possible, the average person. And he was saying that, ASICs are a reality. Everybody's going to be having them at some point. And, we're going to try to get them into as many people's hands as possible so that the mining power is distributed.
So you guys were on one of what I would say is the most interesting panels there. Jonathan and Stephanie, you guys were both on the Bitcoin and Free Speech, moderated by our good friend Mark Hochstein from American Banker.
Yeah, he was so cool. I had dinner with him the other night.
Oh,
yeah, he was really fun to talk to.
Mark's the man.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that.
That was a fun panel. We got a lot of positive feedback on it. It was sort of a nice counterbalance to all the people saying we need more regulation, and we were like, no, Bitcoin is free speech.
Yeah. Well, I think any panel that in 45 minutes talks about prostitution, drugs, and guns is doing the right thing to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Well, Adam got some audio of it, so I think you'll be able to hear that pretty soon.
Yeah. It turns out they weren't recording, they weren't filming any of the talks there. So I took the H4n. That's what we're recording on right now. And I got a direct feed out of the board. And then, of course, for about half of them, I forgot to press the button twice, because you have to press the button twice on this thing. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And I was running around so much the entire time that I only caught, I think, maybe 3 or 4 of the talks. But the ones that we did get, we are going to be releasing.
That's great, yeah. I'm really glad you did that. I wasn't expecting them to not be filming, but maybe...
I was shocked.
Yeah, maybe the next event they will.
This event was really cool. I actually thought that the event was pretty interesting and put on pretty well. It was a little bit more expensive than I would have liked. I know that some people couldn't attend because the cost was simply pretty high relative to, the San Jose conference was like $180 for a 2-day event, and this one was... If you got the early bird price, it was $2.99. If you used our 20% coupon, then it's less than that. Yeah, for a 1 day, and at the door it was $5.99.
Wow.
Really?
So
wow.
Yeah,
it was packed though.
It was packed.
Yeah,
it was packed. And again, over time, people more drifted out of the talks and more into the networking area.
Right.
I know that's what happened with both you and I, Stephanie. But
the thing about these conferences is that it kind of is about the price that they charge, just because. The price is an indicator of how bad you want it.
Well, it determines the type of audience that you get.
That's what I'm saying. So that the other person wanted it bad enough to either scam their way into the conference, as I happen to have done, or to have actually paid the fee.
Right.
So it's not scamming. We gave them something of value.
That's true. That's true.
So yeah, back to the panel. I thought it was really cool because we got to talk about WikiLeaks and some of the potential that Bitcoin has to help organizations that might be marginalized,
right.
And the idea of Bitcoin neutrality, which I know is something that's really interesting to Andreas. So I'm curious to hear his thoughts about that when he hears the panel. But the idea of neutrality of being that, like, if you have a technology like Bitcoin that anybody can use, that's just it. Anybody can use it, right? So some people, they're going to be people you don't like that use it, and they're going to use it for things that you don't like. But there are also going to be people who are great who use it and who use it for things that you do like. And you can't get rid of the so-called bad people without getting rid of everybody's privacy and freedom. So
right. I mean, that's this is the theme that comes up over and over and over again. And it was talked about in your panel pretty extensively. The idea being that if the point is to protect us from crime and to protect the world from certain types of things like terrorism or human trafficking, things like that, then that's all well and good, and that's a noble goal. But, and Stephanie, you had a great point. You said it's all about differentiating the transaction from the actual crime. And the differentiating factor there is that a crime has a victim, whereas a financial transaction has a recipient. That might be something that enables the crime.
Oh, please victimize me by sending me money.
Yeah. But it's about establishing that harm is actually done, not that somebody paid for something that might have potentially caused harm down the road. Because once you start doing that, it gives you the rationale to start listening to everybody and to start tracking everything. And that might make sense in some sort of weird, Alice in Wonderland through the looking glass world. But I think in the world that we live in, most people would agree that if 99.99% of people aren't doing stuff like that, and that small percentage is, it probably doesn't make sense to inconvenience and essentially remove the privacy of all that 99.99% that aren't doing those bad things just to try and stop or at least detect. Because that's the other thing, of course, is that we're not even talking about stopping these things from happening.
Yeah,
we're talking about punishing them.
Yeah, punishing them after the fact.
Punishing them after the fact. So, it makes no sense, except, of course, in this Alice in Wonderland world that we live in.
When the CEO of Discovery was interviewed and they said, "What do you owe your success to?" He said, sharks and Nazis. And I kind of feel like when it comes to Bitcoin and when it comes to security, it's always the terrorists and the pedophiles. And that's always the discussion of like, well, everything always comes down to the 0.01% of bad actors that need to dictate the rest of the 99.9% of the market. And it drives me insane because when you're talking about Bitcoin, it's nothing exists in a vacuum, and it's always compared to what. And when the gentleman asked that question,
how many cash transactions are used in activities that potentially hurt people and do have victims? And I would argue that buying drugs for personal consumption is a victimless crime.
Right. We weren't going to win that argument there.
Right.
I don't know. I think some people were sympathetic to it, especially the guy who asked that question. But yeah, when you're talking about things that actually are crimes that actually have a victim that are causing harm to people, a lot, orders of magnitude more of those are done in cash or through the legacy banking system.
Right.
I think I brought up the point on the panel that, drug dealers, loan sharks, they have bank accounts, right?
Right. And Alan Safahi, oh gosh, I'm probably mispronouncing. Oh, Safahi. Okay, great. Yeah.
From ZipZap.
Yeah, from ZipZap. He's an Iranian.
Yeah.
And has been living in this country for a long time. And one of the things that he talked about was how right now you can go into any store and buy essentially $500 worth of prepaid Visa cards or prepaid debit cards. And there's no KYC process. There's no identity process whatsoever. You can go and you can buy a shoebox full, and they're just as good as cash. And
take them across the border.
Exactly. So it's like, so the idea here is that on the internet it's different, and but you think about it. And it's not different. It's not different at all. There's nothing different about it.
Well, right? The internet's different just because Granddad doesn't know how the tubes work.
This is the thing.
You look at punishment in terms of the internet, and you graffiti a place, and you'll get some community service, but you DDoS a restaurant or a website, DDoS a restaurant for...
Oh, and then you're a cyber terrorist.
And now you get years.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a comparable act of writing graffiti or taking a site down for a few minutes, especially if there are no damages if it's a non-commerce site. And it's just the prosecution of things that are computer related are...
That's why, okay, so it sounds like what you're saying basically is that like the regulations or like the legal system hasn't caught up with the fact that we have the internet and there are analogies to like real world physical things that happen in the world and including so-called crimes and stuff like that. And so what I wonder is there must have been people, and people compare Bitcoin to the internet in like 1992, Bitcoin right now.
Right.
So there must have been people in the early days of the internet who were trying to educate the legislators and tell the government, hey, this is what the internet does, and here's how you can regulate it in a way that makes it friendly to us and stuff like that. There had to have been people trying to do that, but it still hasn't caught up. I mean, 20 years later, we still don't have modern laws that understand the internet in a way. It's still sort of back in the, comparing it to phones and faxes and things like that.
Kevin Mitnick has an amazing autobiography, and in it he writes about how he would hack all of these establishments, but that he wasn't doing anything illegal because there were no laws on the books at it. So they're like, all right, we'll let you go this time. That was just an amazing time to experience in where the internet was so new that there were no laws on it, just like Bitcoin is right now.
So what's the 60-second biography, as you know it, on Kevin Mitnick, for those who don't?
So it's called A Ghost in the Machine, and essentially it's what taught me that Kevin Mitnick is chaotic neutral. Because he had the power to take down billion-dollar establishments, and he could have been the Julian Assange 100 times over, but just wanted to do it so that he could be a phone freak and just like prank call people. Right. And he once got cut off in traffic and this is back in the 90s, got the guy's license plate number, got his cell phone number, called him a few minutes later, and then said, if you're ever on the road again, I will take your license away from you. That's the power that he had. And he didn't use it for good. He didn't use it for evil. He used it for Kevin Mitnick.
He used it for Kevin Mitnick. Chaotic neutral.
Yeah, the chaotic neutral. But it's a fantastic book. That and We Are Anonymous really kind of give you a good understanding of what's it like in the hacker space, especially when it comes to dealing with the law.
Yeah, I guess the point on that was like, if we don't have internet regulations now that are like modern and caught up with the times, so-called, what makes people think who are arguing now that, we need to regulate Bitcoin? What makes people think that they're going to pass laws that are, modern and what these people want for Bitcoin?
But I don't think it's about that when it comes to the regulation. I look at regulation as a thing that's needed because when businesses need investment, when businesses need a bank account, there needs to be some risk mitigation there. And you can't invest in an unknown unknown. And until there's some precedent set in the legal space, Bitcoin businesses are so toxic that banks don't even want to give you an account. There was an entrepreneurship pitch contest.
You don't need a bank account with Bitcoin.
I mean, it does.
Some types of businesses
Sometimes
you do.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
There was a business. There was an entrepreneurship pitch contest earlier this month, and the woman who won because she had 3 bank accounts in 3 separate places that gave her an account.
So anyways, we're just about out of time here. Guys, this has been great. Jonathan, you did real well.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
This is good.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, this is fun. So yeah, this was a fun conference. So there's another one. So I know you've been invited to speak at the one in Las Vegas that's happening in December, yeah?
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to have a lot of the same speakers. I've also been invited back, and so we...
Invited back? What's
They're doing another event. They're doing another one of these
Media
events
Bistro. Okay.
in December. Yeah, Media Bistro, the same company that put this on.
Although it'll be in an even funner context. It's the Social Gaming and Gambling Conference.
Well, my understanding actually is that there are 2 going on at the same time. It's the Bitcoin one and the Social Gaming.
So it is the Social Gaming and Gambling Conference, and they have multiple tracks.
Oh, I see.
And he's going to add a Bitcoin track to that conference. So, he really wants to get that Eric Voorhees on that panel. So if anyone has a gambling company and they wish to have a place to promote it, I would certainly talk to Media Bistro right now.
So, guys, once again, thank you for joining me. This was episode 30. That's, I guess, another milestone. We don't really celebrate milestones because they come by so fast.
Woohoo!
I don't know, we had bacon today, so
Yeah,
I think
bacon.
anytime you have bacon's a celebration.
Fair enough. All right, guys, we'll see you next time on another episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin.
Hi, this is Jason King for Bitcoin100.org, and you're listening to Let's Talk Bitcoin. Bitcoin 100 is old school Bitcoin philanthropy. We've brought further awareness to Bitcoin by having charities and nonprofits add a Bitcoin donation option to their sites. Then we reward them with a $1,000 endowment for their efforts. Please help support us by either donating to our cause at Bitcoin100.org or by helping us find worthy nonprofits that are willing to accept Bitcoin for donations. Thanks.